Welcome to Literary Dialogues with Nina Serrano, bringing you wonderful poets and writers who focus on peace, justice, and a healthy planet. I'm your host, Nina Serrano. My segment today is on the nationwide focus on rethinking our colonizing and racist history. Oakland's Peralta Hacienda Historical Park is now holding a public discussion about changing their name and inviting the public to join the conversation. Our guests today are Diane Wang, educator at Peralta Hacienda, and Holly Alonso, executive director of Peralta Hacienda Historical Park. They're here on Zoom today to share the public conversation and their upcoming events with you, our listeners. Welcome, Diane Wang.
Hello, Nina. I'm so glad to join you.
The same. And welcome, Holly Alonso, executive director and conductor of this public conversation.
Thank you so much, Nina. I'm so happy to be with you at this conversation today.
I'll begin our discussion with you, Holly, and about how and why the process began and how you went about creating a public conversation. Then I want to discuss with you, Diane Wang, your upcoming events and exhibits. Let's begin, Holly, with how this all started. What brought the issue up for you?
During my years of research to create exhibits for the Peralta House, the name Peralta Hacienda Historical Park always seemed weird because I saw from day one that there were two histories that were inextricably intertwined, the Peraltas and the native peoples of the region. And the exhibits that we developed reflect that intertwining, but the name did not.
Could you tell us who the Peraltas were? Many of us don't know our history.
The Peraltas were a land grant family that were brought here on the Anza expedition in 1776 to bring the missions, bring the native peoples of this region into the missions to work as agricultural workers. And the Peraltas, Luis Peralta, the patriarch of that family, received a land grant of 45,000 acres of East Bay land at the end of his military service of 35 years. And during that time, the Spanish soldiers, in order to bring laborers into the mission, went on raids throughout this region and beyond, even up to the Sierra foothills. And the problem was that the native peoples kept dying in the missions, so they had to go out further and further in ever widening circles. And it really was a vicious cycle because they basically, in getting the workers and then having them die in the missions, they never really achieved their goal, and the native peoples were nearly annihilated. I have to say right now, though, that native peoples of this area are undergoing today a flowering and recovering and recapturing their experience, but also singing about it to the hilltops for all of us to take advantage of all that they know about life and land. You know, the fact that the Peralta name goes down in our region as a place name for many streets and things like that. And it also is really important. The whole issue of the name was brought to my attention very powerfully when we had a performance last October, and Corinna Gould, who is one of the foremost Ohlone activists representing the native peoples of this area, referred to her introduction at Peralta Hacienda to Luis Peralta as a murderer. And I realized we really need to bring this story of the native peoples of this area much more powerfully to the fore. And so she and I have become actually collaborators in this project, and it's really, really interesting to hear her point of view about the name.
So then how did this become a public conversation to the point that you wanted to change your name?
Well, so the board of directors and I had been talking about the necessity to change the name for actually a couple of years, even before Corinna's appearance. And then when the whole country erupted in anger about the way history was represented, for instance, of the Confederacy and of California history, with Queen Isabella of Spain being there in front of our state capitol and so on, we all thought, well, no more dithering. Let's do it. Let's really reconsider with the native peoples of this area, and not only the native peoples, but the neighbors who live around the park and even throughout Oakland and in Fruitvale, where the park is located today, because the native peoples and the current neighbors are both the most important stakeholders in this discussion. And so we sent out a sort of a provocative email about the name change process, and we got floods of responses from many people with very divergent opinions.
What were some of them?
Well, we got some really wonderful ones from institutions such as the National Park Service, saying they want to be involved in this process. We got several from descendants of the Californios, those who came on the ANSA expedition and whose families were granted these vast expanses of land, wanting to keep the name Peralta. And we got many responses from neighbors saying they wanted the word hacienda, which actually translates specifically into plantation in English, to go. And then we got a lot of responses from native peoples about possible beautiful names that connected to the native history of the site. One of the most interesting responses, I thought, was from Corinna herself. And she said that taking away a name can have the effect of erasing a history that has to be remembered. And so she didn't want to excise the word Peralta from the name, because that painful history, we have to acknowledge what happened. And so that is part of the story. And so I would say the general consensus is to include the native names. Some neighbors, though, felt that the name shouldn't have any one history foregrounded, that we really want to, above all in Oakland, be inclusive. So all those voices are what will be heard in this discussion over the next couple of months. And we're sort of aiming maybe for 6 months process to get the new name.
Holly, how can our listeners participate in the conversation?
We will be having public discussions, and if you want to be a part of it, email us at info@peraltahacienda.org, and we will keep you informed of all of the activities connected with this process.
Can you please repeat that?
Sure. It's info, info, at Peralta Hacienda, that's PeraltaHacienda.org, peraltahacienda.org.
And then that makes them part of the conversation?
Exactly, yes. And we will put them on the list to be informed of everything that happens. And, if they somehow didn't get that email address, they can go onto our website, which is peraltahacienda.org, and we'll have a link there to get into the conversation.
So how extensive is this conversation, the public part of it?
So the first thing we've done is bring together a group of historians and Native Americans from Fruitvale, but also from the wider Ohlone community. And we've had 2 5 to 6 hour Zoom meetings about not only the naming, but the whole Native American story of the site. So that's a very extended conversation. And then for the public at large, we will have at least 2 or 3 meetings where we invite, everyone to chime in. Then, of course, there's stakeholders like the city of Oakland, and renaming a public place like this is a bureaucratic procedure that gives me a headache, but they'll have to participate too.
So does that mean you have to get the city council to agree?
Yes, city council and Parks and Rec. It's very interesting right now. The Concord Hills Regional Park, which has been established on the Naval Weapons Station, is right at this point going through a naming process. And they, like us, have brought in a lot of Native Americans very specific to that particular site. And so their voices will be very much listened to and important. But the wider listenership of KPFA and Oakland residents and Fruitvale neighbors of the park will be welcomed into this process also.
I wonder if the Chicano community had a distinct opinion.
Great question, Nina, because we're very, of course, involved with the Latino community in Fruitvale and Oakland as a whole. And many, as you know, identify much more strongly with their native roots than with the Spanish imperial roots. And so they identify as indigenous peoples also. And so their voices are very relevant to this discussion. And the whole idea that the whole American Southwest, including California, is part of Aztlán, which is a wider Mexican indigenous world in the centuries before the invasion of the Europeans.
And so are they wanting to keep the Peralta name and the Hacienda name, or are they wanting to change the name?
Many of them, similar to the Ohlone collaborators we work with, are eager to keep somehow both. Because, as I say, as Corinna says, erasing the name would rob the discussion of how this history came to pass. And yet it has to reflect that for thousands of years, millennia, this land was, you can't say belonged to in the modern ownership sense, but this is the land of the Ohlone, and previous to that of other native peoples for millennia, many millennia. And in a certain native sense, they have been here forever because their creation stories reflect eternal presence on this land. And that's something we wish to respect as well.
Well, this is going to be a fascinating process to hear about and also to see what the results become. So thank you very much, Holly Alonso, Executive Director of the Peralta Historical Park. And Diane Wang, are there any virtual and safe social distancing events coming up that listeners may want to participate in?
Yes, there are several events and a program this fall that I hope many listeners will consider. On the weekend of September 12th and 13th, which is just coming up, we will have an outdoor exhibit of all the work done this summer by young people, teenagers who were taking part in Youth Making History. They made large 2 by 3 foot masks, like the ones we wear. One side is blue, they're folded, and the title of the exhibit is Inside My Mask. The people did several, they did autobiographical paintings on these enormous masks that are bound and have straps as though they're made for giants. And we will be displaying those along with some art books they made, and huge platters that they collaged and painted for meaningful meals. All of these will be in an outdoor display area so that it will be safe inside the pavilion, which has been erected right on the site of where the Peraltas, when they first were given the land grant, had Ohlone laborers build the first non-native or non-indigenous residence in the East Bay. So this exhibit, Behind My Mask and Meaningful Meals, will be there at the site of where Oakland first began. And then that will be joining another exhibit that actually is up now, and everyone should come to see it, Black Lives Matter. This being Oakland, of course, when there were disturbances and people filling the streets and shop people were afraid of damage and put up plywood, Oakland always turns the threat of violence or trouble into beauty and into art. So many of the owners in the Fruitvale especially had muralists, and Oakland is so filled with artists, had murals done around the theme of Black Lives Matter. Now, many of those shops have taken down those panels, and we have them on display in the park outdoors, covering the replica of the old Rancho wall, on the face of some of the buildings in the park, on the sides of the pavilion. It's a great, safe place to come, and just thrilling to see all the color and passion for Black Lives Matter. So people should come anytime to come see Black Lives Matter. They should come on the weekends to between 12 and 3 to see Behind My Mask. And then for young people, we already have some programs planned for this fall. In addition to Black Lives Matter, which we just recently mounted, we already have a huge outdoor exhibit called Undocumented Heart. It shows the artwork and the life stories of undocumented workers who are here in Oakland. And it's a remarkable exhibit. It's these are undocumented workers who did both acrylic canvases, but also textile work with Marion Coleman, the Black artist who died this last year, showing their experiences coming to this country. And then alongside it, beneath their work, we have a timeline showing the history of Guatemala, El Salvador, Mexico, why people are being driven to the United States. It's an incredible exhibit. It's been up for a few months now, but that, along with Black Lives Matter and our youth exhibits, really get at what Oakland is.
And the amazing thing is that that is outdoors as well. So Undocumented Heart, Black Lives Matter, and Inside My Mask, you can all enjoy them safely in this huge, beautiful outdoor space.
Diane, did you have a last remark?
Yes, I did. I didn't get to say that this fall, for 10 weeks, we have a program, Youth Making History. Young people can sign up either to do the outdoor work Saturdays from 9 to 2. We'll be nature journaling, we'll be cleaning up Peralta Creek, We'll be doing some video work to document what we do. We'll be preparing a presentation for different agencies. And then we have an online portion for those who aren't allowed out. It's twice a week through Zoom. We'll be studying many of the issues around water, the crises, the Native perspectives on water, and ideas about what we can do. So anyone who is young and would like to participate in either the online or the on-site versions or both certainly should write to peraltahacienda.org. Go to our website and there's a link to fill in your interest form.
Thank you. Could you give that address again?
Yes, it's peraltahacienda.org. And there's a link there to sign up for Youth Making History, the Water Keepers program.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you both, Diane Wang and Holly Alonso, for this conversation. This has been Nina Serrano for La Raza Chronicles. Have a good evening.
Thanks for watching. To read more of my work, poems, novels, and translations, go to ninaserrano.com and you'll hear about upcoming shows.